ladies and gentlemen, it is our duty and obligation and very great honor to make the following announcement and decree. On this day, the 20th day of August, 2020. So I think that's self-explanatory. Yeah, it is now confirmed formally on and for the record of this day, the 20th day of August, 2020, agreed by the state and the Crown by way of unrebutted affidavit and statement of fact that there is a lasting, tacit and binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default.
I need to explain that the decree, okay? Everything I do, or everything I did inside the affidavit, and everything I do in the securitized liens, I use an exact specific language, and I would never, ever, ever use the word tacit, and I would never, ever use the word royal by assent. But I wrote that decree because I'm sending it out to people who are common law, Magna Carta, freeman on the land, through tacit agreement, through acquiescence. This is the language that they use, and it doesn't matter that the decree is in that language, because it's just a decree. It's not part of the affidavit. It's to make the affidavit public. So, you know, there's a reason why I do everything, and I feel I need to explain that.
Can you explain what that means about a lasting, tacit and binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default?
Right, all the acts and statutes in the UK are deemed to have been given royal assent. You know, otherwise they're not acts and statutes, because the government can't create acts and statutes. They are given royal assent.
Okay.
You know, but it's all bullshit. So I actually use that concept because that's what the context that people understand.
Yeah.
You know, that the acts and statutes are given royal assent. Well, this affidavit is given royal assent because, hey, the Queen's not rejected it. The Queen doesn't even know it exists.
All right. Oh, that's good. That makes sense.
And the Queen doesn't give royal assent to jack shit. You know, the head office, the cabinet in Westminster, they make up all their shit along as they go along. People believe that it's given royal assent. You know, so I'm using people's beliefs to add credibility to a declaration which is not part of the affidavit. I'm using psychology, in other words.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And there has never been any such thing as law, but only the presumption of law, where a presumption is nothing of material substance, and any presumption can be dismissed by a formal challenge. It is now confirmed formally on and for the record as of this day, the 20th day of August 2020, agreed by the state and the Crown by way of unrebutted affidavit and statement of fact that there is a lasting, tacit and binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default, that Parliament does not reign supreme, and that any notion of government has no legitimacy without the material evidence that the governed have given their consent, and there cannot be any government for one that cannot exist in isolation without the other. Also, that any action taken by way of an Also, that any action taken by way of an act or statute of Parliament is and always has been a criminal offence of fraud and malfeasance in the office at the very least. Any action taken by way of act or statute is a criminal offence of fraud and malfeasance. So how is that the case?
Because the 7.5 billion people on the planet, or the 67.5 million people in the UK, have not agreed to be governed. There's no contracts. No one has signed the consent to be governed. But there is hundreds, if not thousands, of office cabinets and drawers full of signed legal consents for everyone that's been to the dentist or everyone that's been to the doctors. But no one has signed the consent of the governed agreeing to be governed. Doesn't exist. Yeah, this stuff will mess with your head because it's a direct opposite to what you've been led to believe or what you think you know. And that's what people have a problem with. unlearning the bullshit and the brainwashing is one of the hardest things that you'll ever do. You know, to take that all that crap that you've been brainwashed with and put it in the bin. And these are the facts now. You know, these are the sanctioned and approved facts with royal assent.
It is now confirmed formally on and behalf of, for the record, as of this day, the 20th of August, 2020, agreed by the state and the Crown by way of rebutted affidavit and statement of fact that there is a lasting tacit agreement, lasting tacit and binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default, that the office of the judiciary is nothing more than a sub-office of a commercial body, and the status and standing of any judge or magistrate currently on this land has no greater status or standing or authority than the manager of McDonald's. It is also formally recognised on and for the record that the state is a legal embodiment of an act by an act of registration, which is of no material substance and therefore fraud by default, and that the interests of the state are the interests of the state alone, to the detriment of anybody and anything else, including its own officers of the state, that the actions of the state are now recognised as unconscionable and criminal fraternity capable of heinous crimes without measure. All right, David, did you want to say anything on that?
I did, but it's how am I going to put this into words? You know, the state is a company no different to McDonald's.
Yeah.
And you've got to therefore at that point, when we actually get into the affidavit, read them 7 pages by Shannon Cathutas, because it took him 7 pages to quantify the fact that a state is just a corporate entity. Now, what is a corporate entity? You've got an acts of registration. So, okay, if you want to start a company, let's start a hypothetical company right now. Let's call it the Bill and Ben Landscape Gardening Company Limited. Right. So that's the name of the company. I just made it up out of fresh air. There's no physical substance to it. You know, you can't touch it. It's an idea. And you write that down on a piece of paper as a company name. And that company name gets sent to well, in the UK, it's a company's registration office, registered as a company. So where is the physical company? How can you touch this company? It's still an act of registration of a name, which is a concept in the abstract. You can't touch this company because it doesn't exist. You can't physically get hold and touch the company. You know, the piece of paper is not the company. The company address is not the company because that predates the company. The company bank account is not the company. The company directors and the CEO are not the company. So how can you physically touch this company? It's not there. It has no physical substance to it. So something that has no physical substance to it, but is claimed to exist, that's fraud.
Yeah, right. Okay. It is now confirmed formally and for the record as of this day, the 20th day of August 2020, agreed by the state and the Crown by way of unrebutted affidavit and statement of fact, and that there is a lasting tacit and binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default, that any and all executable orders and documents must carry an affixed common seal, which denotes point of origin, and that any and all excitable orders and documents must be signed by human hand in wet ink by a named authoritative living being who takes full responsibility for the content of that formal excitable order or document. Any deviation from this standing process where there is no affixed common seal or signature in wet ink by a living hand with the authority to do so will be recognized in perpetuity as a criminal offence. It is now formally confirmed formally and on for the record of this day, the 20th day of August 2020, agreed by the state and Crown by way of unrebutted affidavit and statement of fact, and that there is a lasting tacit and binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default, that all imposed taxation and duty is always and has been not only a criminal offence, but it is also detrimental to all the people of this planet. That from this day forward and as of the 20th day of August 2020, and in perpetuity, the enforcement of all taxation and duty is recognized as an act of terrorism. Is there anything you want to say on that, David?
Well, yeah, like I was saying before about the tax upon the tax upon the tax, it all gets flushed down the black hole. You work, I've worked for 40 years. You work to get paid. You work to get that cash that you need to live. And the government steal 85% of your life and it gets flushed down the pan. You're stealing your life, that's genocide.
It is now confirmed formally on and for the record as of this day, the 20th day of August 2020, agreed by the state and the Crown by way of unrebutted affidavit and statement of fact that there is a lasting tacit and binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default that there is no such thing as money or commerce. Nobody gets paid or has been paid. Nobody has the capability to pay anybody for anything or item without money. All commercial instruments are nothing more than pieces of paper with marks on them. That there is value, that their value is only confidence and belief, where confidence and belief is recognized as being of no material substance. The continued use of these commercial instruments is for the feeble of mind who insist on living in a make-believe world of their own making. Capitalism will forever be recognized and in perpetuity as the exploitation of another for personal gain. This has always been an unconscionable and detrimental activity to the human race since Babylonian times.
Babylon, someone decided that gold and silver had a monetary value. Well, no, gold and silver is just a metal.
Yeah.
But prior to that, all commerce was done in barter. I'm going to swap my 10 chickens for your pig. Barter is barter. You can't tax barter, but as soon as you institute by force, the Babylonian force, the implementation of using commerce in money, then you can tax. You can tax it all. It's all about tax. Always has been. Stealing your cash, stealing your life.
It is now confirmed formally on and for the record as of this day, the 20th day of August 2020, agreed by the state and the Crown by way of unrebutted affidavit and statement of fact that there is a lasting tacit and binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default. There is no greater sanctuary than the human home, be this home a castle or a wood hut or a blanket on the ground. From this day forward, as of the 20th day of August 2020, let it be known that any transgression of this sanctuary other than by invitation, that any transgression of this sanctuary is a recognized act of war and aggression. We have the right, by the very fact that we live, to protect our life and the life of our loved ones. Any transgression of this sanctuary can be met with equal or great force with impunity. This is the long-standing law and traditions of the land, so say we all.
It's not just your home. You think of your home, your castle, whether it's your home, your castle, a blanket on the ground, or your tent. It's this. That is your home. Your body is your home.
It is now confirmed formally on and for the record as of this day, the 20th day of August 2020, agreed by the state and the Crown by way of unrebutted affidavit and statement of fact that there is a lasting tacit and binding agreement through acquiescence and royal assent by default, that the practice of election by way of a secret ballot is and always has been an abomination and a deception with no credibility or redeeming qualities. By the very fact this is a secret ballot, by any means of notarization or recording, renders the outcome obsolete by definition. That is a secret ballot. By the very fact there is not a recognized unelective or reverse process of election, and by the very fact that there is no such word to this effect in the recognized dictionaries, then this elective process by way of secret ballot is and always has been void ab initio.
Void ab initio, yeah. Void from the beginning.
Sorry?
Void from the beginning.
Okay.
I hate using the Latin, but people like it.
Have a nice day. And on for the record, bring out the town crier and let the bell ring. Let it be known across this planet that from this day, the 20th day of August 2020, that the satanic Roman Empire is no more. Let it be by decreed that this is the day and will always be the day in perpetuity when the days of austerity and tyranny end for all time to come. Let this day go down in history across the planet as a day of celebration for all time. So say we all. Let the celebrations begin. So say we all. No assured value, no liability, no errors and omissions accepted. All rights reserved. The affidavit of truth and statement of fact. Number 1, I, Peter Joseph of the House of Hum, being the undersigned, do solemnly swear, declare, and depose. 2, that I am competent to state the matters herein, and do take oath and swear that the matters herein are true, certain, and correct, as contained within this Peter Joseph of the House of Hum affidavit of truth and fact. 3, I am herein stating the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and these truths stand as fact until another can provide the material and physical evidence to the contrary. 4, that I fully and completely understand before any changes can be brought, it must be firstly proved by presenting the material evidence to support the fact that the charges are valid and have substance that can be shown to have material physical substance as a foundation in fact. 5,
So a
from
presumption cannot have a foundation in facts because it's a presumption.
foundations in fact. Sorry, say that. Can you say that again?
So a presumption cannot have a foundation in fact because it's a presumption.
Right.
Yeah. We're
That
talking
makes
about
sense.
physical stuff here. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So 5, from Exhibit A, formal challenge to the 12 presumptions of law. A presumption is something that is presumed to be true, and as a presumption, then there is only a need for a formal challenge to that presumption to dismiss that presumption until the physical and material evidence can be presented to support that presumption. That makes sense. From Exhibit B, Case Authority WI-05257F, David Ward versus Warrington Borough Council, 30th day of May, 2013, which is a case at court tribunal undertaken by recognized due process. It is clear in the case that David Ward, that's you, David.
That's me.
Yeah. that David Ward did not challenge the PCN or the Traffic Management Act 2004, Section 82. But what was challenged was the presumption of the consent of the governed. What is a mandatory requirement before the acts and statutes can be legally acted upon is that the consent of the governed has some validity and that it can be presented as material fact before any charges can be brought. It is clear from this case authority undertaken by due process that 1, it is illegal to act upon any of the acts or statutes without the consent of the governed, where the governed have actually given their consent, and that consent is presentable as material physical evidence of the fact that the governed have given their consent. That makes sense. It's long, but where
we're into legalese here now. This is the way you've got to write things down in legalese.
Yeah, right. Where the acts and statutes are acted upon, then this is illegal and a criminal action by the state. 3, the criminal action is malfeasance in a public office and fraud. 4, where there is no consent of the governed on and for the public record, then there is not governed, and where there is no governed, then there is no government. The one cannot exist without the other. 5, as this criminal activity is observed to be standard practice and has been for nearly 800 years, then this is a clear observable evidence to the fact that law is a presumption and there is no such thing as law. See Exhibit A, the 12 presumptions of law. From Exhibit C, the material evidence of the facts. It has been confirmed by the Right Honourable Lord Chief Justice Sir Jack Beatson, FBA, on and for the record that, 1, whilst there is no material and physical evidence to the fact that the governed have given their consent, then the office of the judiciary has no greater authority than the local manager of McDonald's. As the office of the judiciary is a sub-office of a legal embodiment by an act of registration, where this act of registration creates nothing of physical material substance and is also a fraud by default. Any objection to this observation of fact should be taken up with the Right Honourable Lord Chief Justice Sir Jack Beatson, FBA, where the Right Honourable Lord Chief Justice Sir Jack Beatson, FBA, would then have to present the material and physical evidence that the governed have given their consent. As the office of the judiciary is nothing more than a private, commercial and fraudulent enterprise built upon fraud and criminal intent. This is by no stretch of the imagination a valid government by the people, for the people, as it is by default a private company providing a judicial service for profit and gain, but where there is also and always a conflict of interest, where there is a conflict of interest between the needs of the people and the state company policy, which has no obligations to the people or even the needs and well-being of the company staff. This has been confirmed by Chandran Kukathas of the London School of Economics and State Office titled the Department of Government. See Exhibit C, the material evidence of facts. From Exhibit D, it is quite clear there is due process for the execution of illegal and commercial documents. Where these processes are not followed, then the very presence of a document which does not comply with these processes, then the document itself is physical and material evidence of malfeasance in a public office and fraud. From Exhibit E, it is very clear that all instances of taxation and duty, VAT, is not only necessary, but only serves to deplete and subtract from the population's prosperity. Not only this, but as we have shown, it is also illegal and criminal to do so without the agreement of the consent of the governed. It is unconscionable and a recognized act of terrorism. The exhibit speaks for itself. From Exhibit F, the facts are the facts. There is no money. The facts are the facts. A great number of people live their lives in a world of make-believe. Let's consider this. 2 barristers or lawyers will and do enter into a courtroom, and one of them will lose. For some reason which is beyond our comprehension, it is a professionally accepted practice to have a 50% failure rate. In a world of reality, there are some people who service the planes at the local airport between flights. If these people had a 50% failure rate, then 50% of the planes would fall out of the sky. That is a fact. There is no money, just the illusion of money. There is legal tender and fiscal currency and commercial instruments and promissory banknotes, but there is no money. It is quite clear that a lot of people live in a world of make-believe and Alice in Wonderland and La La Land. There is no money. It is not possible to pay for anything without money. You never paid for anything and you never got paid. That is a fact. Anyone make any comment on that, David?
Well, that is the fact, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
whether it's gold and silver, that's also an idea, a concept in the abstract, or whether it's a fiat currency without any basis in physical substance to support as a foundation for that note. You know, back in the day, it used to be gold and silver as a foundation for the notes. Well, when that foundation for the note was taken away, which is just prior to 1869, with the Insolvency Act of 1869, then the note is just a note. It's a note based upon confidence and belief. It's not even based upon any commodity as sand or air or mud or wood or gold or silver or anything. Therefore, fiat currency is a belief and it's not money.
Yeah. Okay, there is no valid legal or lawful government on this land. See Exhibit H, the hypocrisy of the secret ballot elective process. From Exhibit G, my rights end where your rights begin. Your rights end where my rights begin. Rights are not granted by government or the crown, and they cannot be taken away or violated by government or the crown. A judge does not have the right to trespass on my property, so the judge cannot give a bailiff or a civil enforcement officer or a policeman the right by means of a warrant or an order, because the judge, who is a company servant by default, does not have that authority unless I agree. A public servant is a servant by default with the status of servant, and a servant has no authority above the one who grants that authority. Until the judge can present the agreement or the consent of the governed, then the judge has no authority to grant a warrant or court order. Exhibit Case Authority WI 05257F, David Ward versus Warrington Borough Council, 30th day of May 2013. Also Exhibit C, material facts, the material evidence of the facts. These are the facts. The material evidence of these facts has been provided. This affidavit of truth and statement of facts stands on and for the record as fact until some other can present material physical evidence to the contrary, which is valid, without will or vexation, for and on behalf of the principal legal embodiment by the title of Mr. Peter Hum, for and on behalf of the Attorney General House of Hum, for and on behalf of Peter Joseph of the House of Hum, all rights reserved.